It began in a quiet room on a late summer afternoon, the light spilling through half-drawn curtains, falling in soft patches across the bed where an elderly man lay still, his breathing shallow and uneven. His family had gathered, their voices hushed, each one sensing the nearness of a moment no one could truly prepare for. A nurse, standing quietly in the corner, would later write of what happened in those final moments, recording it not just as a medical observation but as something that felt deeply otherworldly. She described how his chest rose one last time, the breath lingering in his throat before releasing in the gentlest exhale, almost as though he was sighing with relief. And then, though the body was still, there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a faint, almost imperceptible change in the air itself. It wasn't the absence of life so much as the presence of something else. She swore that as his final breath left him, something rose, not a shadow, not a mist, but a sensation, a kind of lifting that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. She felt it rather than saw it, as though the very air around the bed had expanded. The family, lost in their own grief, didn't notice, but she stood transfixed, aware that in that instant the man was no longer bound to the body they had all been watching so closely. Later, when she was asked to describe it, she struggled for words. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't violent. It was, in her words, like watching a bird finally take flight after being still for far too long. The moment of death is often imagined as a sudden severing, but accounts like this suggest it is more a gentle untying of knots that have bound the soul to the body for decades. The final breath acts as the last loosening of the cord. In the moments just before, the soul hovers in a kind of delicate balance, aware of the threshold it is about to cross, yet still connected to the familiar weight of flesh and bone. For some, there is fear, the clinging instinct of the human mind that doesn't quite trust what it cannot see. For others, there is only peace, the quiet recognition that this is not an ending but a return. What happens in those first moments is both profoundly simple and unimaginably complex. Accounts from near-death experiences, from hospice workers, and from spiritual traditions around the world align in subtle but striking ways. There is often a distinct awareness of leaving, not of fading away, but of moving into a wider, clearer state of consciousness. It is as if you have been looking through a keyhole your whole life, and, suddenly, the door swings open, the edges of the room blur, colors intensify, sounds shift from muffled to crystalline. You might still see the people in the room, hear their sobs, even reach out instinctively to touch them, but your hand passes through, and that is when you begin to realize something extraordinary has occurred. The shift in perception is almost immediate. Gravity, that constant companion you never thought about, is gone. The heaviness in your limbs, the pull on your spine, the subtle ache in your bones, all of it vanishes. You feel weightless, not in the sense of floating on air, but as if the very concept of weight has been erased from your reality. Your thoughts move faster, clearer, unburdened by the sluggishness of a brain that required oxygen and rest. And yet, there is an uncanny duality. You may see your own body lying there, the chest now still, the skin cooling, and feel a deep tenderness for it, the same way you might look at a home you once loved but have now outgrown. In this first minute, there is rarely a sense of being alone. Many report an immediate awareness of presences, some familiar, others unknown, standing just beyond the edge of perception. It is not the eerie sensation of being watched, but rather the comforting recognition of being received. Some describe these presences as loved ones who passed before, their features clear and illuminated, radiating a love so complete it eclipses anything experienced in physical life. Others feel the nearness of guides, beings whose faces they cannot place but whose energy feels as ancient as time itself. They are there not to pull you forward or push you away, but simply to stand as witnesses and companions as you cross into the next space. As the seconds pass, a new awareness dawns. The boundaries of your physical senses dissolve. Sight is no longer limited to the direction your eyes face. You can perceive in all directions at once. Hearing is no longer a matter of air vibrating against eardrums. It is as if you are tuned into the pure essence of sound, able to sense meaning before words are even formed. And perhaps most surprising, emotion is no longer tangled in the messy filters of the mind. Love is felt as a tangible force, warm and absolute, not dependent on conditions or circumstances. But for some, there is also confusion. Imagine waking from a vivid dream in a strange place. You know you are awake, but the surroundings are unfamiliar. The soul, especially if unprepared, may hesitate, glancing back toward the body, clinging to the scene of family members holding hands or whispering prayers. There is no ticking clock in these moments, no pressure. Yet there is a gentle pull toward something brighter, larger, and infinitely more welcoming. These first moments are where choice begins to take root, even if subtly. You can linger, observing the room, soaking in the last sensations of earthly life. Or you can turn toward the beckoning presence that radiates beyond physical sight, a presence that feels like the sum of every joy, every safe place, every moment of awe you have ever known. The pull is magnetic, but it is not coercion, it is invitation. And yet, these details, the lifting, the shift in senses, the immediate presence of unseen companions, are rarely discussed in the modern world outside of hushed spiritual circles. The official language of death is clinical, concerned with heartbeats, brain activity, and legal time of passing. But if these accounts are to be believed, the truer story of death is written in the moments after those metrics have ceased. It is a story of expansion, of recognition, of a transition so natural it feels like remembering who you truly are. This is where the question arises, the one that has haunted seekers for centuries. If this is what happens in the first few breaths beyond life, what comes next? Does the soul move instantly toward its next great chapter, or is there more, layers of experience, choices, and revelations that unfold in the minutes and hours after departure? The answer, it seems, depends on the life you have lived, the attachments you hold, and the readiness of your soul to step fully into the vastness that awaits. But one thing is clear: the first 15 minutes after death are not empty. They are a passageway filled with presence, memory, and an unshakable truth. You were never just a body, and you were never alone. It begins almost imperceptibly, like the faintest loosening of a thread you didn't know was holding you in place. There is no violent tearing, no harsh snap, but rather a quiet, gradual unfastening from the inside out. The body, once so familiar, begins to feel foreign, as if its weight and density no longer belong to you. Every muscle, every bone, every beat of the heart feels distant, as though they are happening somewhere else. You realize you are not losing consciousness. In fact, the opposite is happening. There is a rising clarity, a strange brightness to your awareness, like a fog has been removed from your mind. Your senses are no longer funneled through the physical frame, yet somehow they are sharper, fuller, more complete. The limits you've always known are gone, and you can feel the boundaries of your perception expanding in all directions. The moment of separation has no clear line you can point to. It feels more like slipping between waking and dreaming, except this time you don't lose yourself. Instead, you feel yourself becoming more. Your body might still be lying there, still breathing faintly or already still, but it is no longer you in the way it once was. It's as if you're stepping out of a garment that was comfortable once but now feels impossibly small. There is no fear, only the quiet recognition that you are not ending, you are moving. You notice that even though you have no heartbeat, you are pulsing with something else, some kind of life force rhythm that doesn't depend on flesh or blood. That pulse feels ancient, like it has always been there, patiently waiting beneath the noise of the body to be felt again. The lifting begins subtly, not as an upward pull but as a release from the downward drag you didn't realize you were under your entire life. Gravity itself seems to lose its claim on you. Your perspective shifts. At first you are still looking from the same position, but then you realize you are not bound to that position at all. You can see the room, the space, the details in ways you never could before. There's a sense of 360-degree vision, but it's not even vision in the way your eyes once worked. It's the ability to know and perceive your surroundings without effort. It's as if your awareness itself has form and can stretch without limit. Then there's the slipping, a gentle sensation, as though you're being drawn through a thin membrane. You don't push against it, and it doesn't resist you. It feels natural, like stepping into a familiar place you had forgotten existed. The texture of reality changes. The air no longer feels heavy on you, and sound is no longer something that has to travel to your ears. Instead, knowing replaces the slow mechanics of physical senses. You don't hear a loved one crying. You feel their grief directly, deep in your awareness, in a way that's intimate but not overwhelming. For some, this is the moment of astonishment, not at being dead, but at realizing how alive you feel without the body. The constant aches, the weariness, the unspoken heaviness you carried in your bones, all of it dissolves instantly. You might even wonder how you ever thought the body was your true self. You glance at it, that still form, and it seems both familiar and impossibly distant. You may feel gratitude for it, even affection, but there is no urge to go back inside. You know now that you were never truly inside it, only linked to it, like a driver to a vehicle, and now the link has been released. The most surprising part is the stability of your consciousness. You expect drifting, disorientation, but instead you find balance, a calm, steady awareness that is more you than you've ever felt before. It's like a quiet voice inside. The one you heard in fleeting moments of peace during life is now the whole of your being. Every thought feels pure, unfiltered, no longer clouded by the noise of survival, hunger, or fear. The clarity is intoxicating, but it's not a rush. It's the calm joy of remembering something essential. You may notice that you still feel movement, not the movement of limbs, but a kind of gliding. It's as if your awareness is weightless and can flow without effort toward wherever your attention goes. If you think of someone, you sense them instantly. If you think of a place, it's as though the space between you and it evaporates. Time itself begins to loosen its grip on you, and the idea of before and after starts to feel irrelevant. You're moving, but without needing to go anywhere. You're still, but without feeling stuck. Some describe this phase as being wrapped in an invisible current. There's a soft pull to it, something that feels guiding but not forceful. You can follow it or linger. If you linger, you may notice details in your surroundings you never could have before. Colors that feel alive, light that isn't just brightness but a living presence. Even the air seems aware, responsive to your own state of being. It's here that you realize the physical world was only ever one layer of a much larger tapestry. And perhaps the most humbling realization comes here, that you are not falling into nothingness, but rising into a greater reality that has been here all along. You have not lost the body, you've simply laid it down the way you might set aside a heavy backpack after a long journey. The sensation is relief without loss, liberation without fear. You understand now, in a way that words can't fully hold, that death was never the opposite of life, only the end of limitation. And once the release happens, there's no going back to believing you were ever truly bound. It often begins with the strange sense that nothing has really happened. There is no jolt, no explosion of light, no dramatic moment announcing that everything you knew is over. Instead, you open what feels like your eyes, though they are not the eyes you once used, and you see the room exactly as you left it. The same faces are there, leaning over the bed, some weeping, some whispering softly. The same sunlight spills across the floor. The same hum of a machine or rustle of clothing fills the air. And for a moment, you think you must have drifted off for only a second, because everything looks so familiar. Then you notice something different. Your chest is not rising and falling. You are not breathing, and yet you are more awake than you have ever been. The first shock is not fear, but a deep, surreal confusion. How can you be here, standing or hovering in the same space, able to see every detail of the room, when your body is lying motionless just a few feet away? Some souls immediately understand what has happened. A lifetime of spiritual openness or past encounters with the other side has prepared them for this moment. But for many, the realization comes like a slow dawn, hesitant, almost reluctant. You move closer to your loved ones, maybe even try to speak, but your words are not sound. You reach out to touch a shoulder or brush away a tear, but your hand passes through without resistance. The shock deepens. What's strange is that, despite this impossibility, your senses feel sharper, more complete than they ever did in the body. The scent of the flowers in the vase is overwhelming in its sweetness. The texture of the air itself feels alive against you. You can see the faintest movements, the pulse in someone's neck, the trembling of their hands, with a clarity you never noticed before. But the most striking thing is the emotional landscape. You no longer feel cut off from the thoughts and feelings of the people around you. Their grief is not something you witness from the outside. It moves through you as if their hearts are open books, each page turning in your presence. For some souls, this awareness becomes a moment of desperate longing. They want to tell their family that they are still here, that they can hear every word, that the love flowing toward them is not wasted. They try, over and over, to form the words in a way that will break through the invisible wall, only to feel the frustration of being unheard. Others find themselves drawn to certain individuals in the room, a child who looks up suddenly, scanning the space as if they sense something, or a pet who begins staring at the empty air with unusual intensity. These small moments can be both comforting and heartbreaking, for they are signs that some still feel your presence, even if they cannot explain it. The surprise of this stage is not only in realizing that you have left your body, but in recognizing that the separation is not as complete as you imagined it would be. You can still see, still hear, still feel connected to the world you just departed. The boundary between here and there is thinner than the living ever suspect. For a time, you may even believe that you can remain indefinitely in this liminal space, watching over those you love, holding on to the last threads of your earthly life. And in truth, some do linger for hours, days, even longer, reluctant to step further away. But there is another layer to the shock, one that comes when you begin to notice what else is in the room with you. At first, your focus is on the physical world, the people, the bed, the walls, the familiar objects you've known for years. Then, as your awareness expands, you see movement in the corners, where no one stands, light flickering where no lamps are lit. Shapes emerge, some like shimmering outlines of people, others more like glowing clouds of color. There is a warmth to these presences, and though they may be strangers to your conscious memory, they feel profoundly familiar to your soul. You realize they have been there from the first moment you crossed over, waiting patiently for you to notice them. Still, the mind, or whatever remains of the patterns that once made up your thinking, hesitates. You may ask yourself if this is a dream, if you are imagining it. The logical framework of the physical brain is gone, yet remnants of its training remain, and they resist the new reality. This resistance is where many souls experience a kind of second death, the letting go not of the body, but of the belief that the body was all you were. Once that belief is released, the scene shifts. The room is no longer the only reality you perceive. Layers of space unfold, like veils being lifted, and you sense that the world you have known is just one of many overlapping realms. And yet, even in this expanded state, the pull toward your loved ones remains strong. You can stand beside them, whisper comfort they cannot hear, rest your presence around them like a blanket. You can watch them speak of you in the past tense, and feel the ache of wanting to correct them. It is in these moments that some realize the true reason they linger, not because they fear what comes next, but because they fear leaving those who are still bound to time, pain, and grief. The shock of awareness is not just about understanding that you have died. It is about realizing that the love you carry does not end here, that it will follow you into whatever lies ahead. This stage is where the choice begins to emerge. You can remain, watching over them as they weep, laugh, or begin to pack away your belongings. Or you can turn toward the other presences, those quiet guides who wait at the edge of your perception, ready to lead you into a wider reality. The shock will fade, replaced by a strange, luminous calm, but only if you allow yourself to take that next step. Until then, you will stand between worlds, no longer living, not yet fully gone, watching the life you knew become a memory, and wondering what waits just beyond the edge of sight. It begins quietly, so quietly that the person lying there may not even notice it happening until it is well underway. The body, after years of carrying you, starts to loosen its hold, not in an instant, but in a slow, deliberate sequence. There is a shift in the flow of life energy, almost like a tide pulling back from the shore. At first, it is felt in the farthest reaches of the body, the fingertips, the toes. These extremities, once the active explorers of the physical world, start to feel distant, almost hollow. Warmth fades first there, replaced by a strange neutrality. It's not cold exactly, but it is absent of the living current that has flowed through them since birth. This withdrawal is not a symptom of loss, it is the sign of a gathering. The body is drawing everything inward. The process feels like a retreat, but not from fear, it is more like returning home. The life force that once extended out through every nerve and vessel is now pulling back, concentrating itself at the center. This is not a collapse but a convergence, a focusing of the essence into a smaller and smaller point. The arms and legs grow still not because they are abandoned, but because their purpose is complete. The current that once animated them is being reclaimed. As the energy leaves the outer edges, awareness shifts inward. The senses, once scattered to every part of the body, begin to unify. Vision blurs not because the eyes fail, but because the eyes are no longer needed for sight. Hearing dims not from deafness, but because another way of perceiving is already awakening. The body is no longer the seat of perception, it has become the vessel that is preparing to release its passenger. The pull toward the heart is unmistakable. For a moment, everything seems to be there, all sensations, all presence, all vitality gathered into this single beating center. The heart, long a servant to the brain's commands, now takes the lead in this final act. It is as if it knows it will be the last anchor, the last place where life will dwell before the great departure. Every beat becomes heavier, more deliberate, as though it is aware of the significance of each pulse. The energy here is dense, concentrated, almost luminous if you could see it. It is the soul gathering itself, calling all fragments home. From this point, there is a rising. The movement is subtle, yet undeniable. The current begins to shift upward, as if drawn by something above. It passes through the throat, a place where so much has been spoken and so much left unsaid. For some, there is a sensation of release here, as though the last unspoken truths are silently acknowledged before being left behind. Breathing may grow shallow, but it is no longer the lungs that matter. The body's mechanics are giving way to something far more profound. When the energy reaches the head, it pools there, gathering behind the eyes, around the temples, in the center of the skull where ancient traditions have always pointed to the seat of higher connection. There is a sense of fullness here, but also of readiness. The body's energy field, which once radiated outward in all directions, now seems to contract to this single, concentrated point. It is like a spark waiting to leap. The crown of the head begins to feel open, expansive, as though a door you didn't know existed is slowly unlocking. Some describe a sensation of light above them, calling them upward. Others feel as though their awareness is being gently drawn through a narrow passage, a funnel that guides them without force, but with certainty. The final release is not violent. It is the most natural motion you have ever made, like stepping from one room into another, or breathing out after holding your breath for too long. The instant the life force leaves through the crown, there is a profound stillness in the body. Those who watch from the outside may call it death, but from the inside it feels like emergence. There is no pain, no panic, only the sensation of completion. The body becomes quiet, but you do not. You feel more alive than you did seconds before, except now your aliveness is not confined to muscle or bone. Looking down, you may see the body as it was in that last moment, still and pale, the weight of gravity reclaiming it, but you also see why it could never hold you forever. It was never the sum of who you are, only the space you inhabited for a time. Now, with the life force fully withdrawn, you are free to move in ways you never could before. There is no heartbeat, yet your essence beats with an ancient rhythm. There is no breath, yet you are breathing in the very fabric of existence itself. What lingers most after this process is the realization that nothing has been taken from you. The energy that was in your hands, your feet, your heart, it is still yours, only rearranged, condensed, and set free. The path it took in those last moments was precise, purposeful, almost ceremonial. It is the body's final gift to the soul, to gather everything you are, place it at the center, lift it upward, and hand you over to the next reality. And in that moment, you understand that life did not leave you, you simply carried it somewhere the body could never follow. It happens quietly, almost imperceptibly, as if they had been standing in the room all along, simply waiting for you to finally turn your head and notice. At first, you may think they are people from the living world, perhaps slipping in through the door without sound. They look solid, real, their eyes filled with a familiarity that makes something inside you relax. But when you look closer, you see the faint glow around them, the way the air seems softer in their presence, the way their very form hums with a warmth that isn't physical. Some wear the faces of those you have known, a mother long past, a dear friend from years gone by, even a beloved pet, padding toward you with a tail that wags in pure recognition. Others are unfamiliar to your current life, but stir a deep, aching memory in your soul, as if you have known them for centuries beyond counting. The moment you truly see them, a profound shift occurs inside you. The confusion of the last minutes, the disbelief, the attempts to speak to those who can no longer hear you, begins to melt away. You are not alone in this strange space between worlds. These beings stand as both guardians and guides, and their arrival feels like the first real anchor in an unfamiliar sea. Some souls rush to embrace them, not caring that the contact is not of flesh but of energy, a merging of presence that carries the essence of a hug. Others hang back, still unsure of what is happening, wondering if these figures are illusions, dreams, or fragments of memory conjured by a mind trying to comfort itself. The truth is that these welcoming presences are not here by chance. They have been drawn to you in this moment for reasons that stretch far beyond the limits of your most recent lifetime. For some, they are family or friends from your current incarnation, waiting to receive you into the fold of the unseen. For others, they are members of what some call your soul group, companions from lifetimes past, who have agreed to walk alongside you through many cycles of existence. They come because you matter to them on a level far deeper than blood or shared history. They come because your arrival in this space marks a sacred turning point, and no soul is meant to cross it entirely alone. Why then, do some recognize these presences instantly while others remain unaware? The difference lies not in the beings themselves, but in the awareness of the soul arriving. For those who have lived with an openness to the spiritual, who have cultivated an inner sense of the unseen, the faces are clear, the voices ring familiar. They may even have dreamed of these guides before, or felt their presence in moments of great trial or joy while alive. For others, the recognition is slower, muted by the lingering disbelief that they have truly died. The human mind clings fiercely to the physical world, and when that mind has only just let go, it can blur the perception of the greater reality that now surrounds you. The presences are patient. They do not demand recognition, nor do they push you forward before you are ready. They wait, radiating a steady assurance that feels like home. If you meet their gaze, you may notice that they communicate without words. Their thoughts are not sent through sound but through a direct current of meaning, flowing into your awareness with perfect clarity. It is here, in this silent exchange, that many souls first feel the depth of unconditional acceptance that these beings carry. It is not the approval of someone who judges your worth. It is the knowing love of someone who has witnessed every mistake and triumph across all your lifetimes, and cherishes you regardless. In some cases, the first observers are not only guides or family but spiritual teachers who have walked with you unseen during your physical life. Their presence now may stir a deep reverence or even awe, as if standing in the company of an ancient friend whose wisdom has shaped your path in ways you never realized. They may appear in forms that are symbolic rather than literal robed figures, beings of pure light, or archetypal shapes from a tradition you hold sacred. Each soul receives the image that will most easily open their heart and ease the passage forward. And then there are the souls who arrive in such shock, confusion, or fear that they do not see the presences at all. These spirits might remain focused on the physical scene they have just left, circling their loved ones, attempting to make contact, or even refusing to believe they have died. For them, the first observers remain just beyond the edge of perception, waiting for the moment when the newly departed finally turns away from the earthly tether and allows the new reality to come into focus. There is no rush, for time here is not as it is in the physical. Whether it takes seconds or what would seem like days, the meeting will happen when the soul is ready to receive it. When the recognition does occur, It is like a door swinging open. A wave of memory may pour through, not the memories of a single lifetime, but of bonds and shared journeys across ages. You may recall standing beside one of these guides in another era, or working together toward a purpose long forgotten by your waking mind. You may remember saying goodbye to them once before, promising to meet again at this very threshold. The reunion can bring a joy so profound that it washes away the remnants of fear or sadness left from the moment of death. The first observers serve another vital role beyond comfort. They orient you. They help you understand the transition you are in, to feel the pull toward the realms beyond, and to know that you are being led rather than lost. Their presence alone can calm the instinct to cling to the familiar and can spark a trust that allows you to take the first steps into the unknown. For many, this is the moment when the journey truly begins, not the death itself, but the acknowledgement that you are in the company of those who have walked this path before and know the way ahead. Some say that the first beings you see after death are a reflection of the state of your own soul. If you carry love, you meet love. If you carry fear, you may first see shadows until that fear is soothed away. But no matter the condition of your passing, these welcoming presences remain, steadfast, patient, and ready to guide you forward. And when you finally turn your attention to them fully, you will understand that you have never truly been alone, not in life, not in death, and not in the infinite journey that stretches beyond both. It does not happen with ceremony or announcement. There is no booming voice declaring that your life will now be shown to you. Instead, it begins quietly, like a single memory rising to the surface without warning. One moment you are simply aware of having left the body behind, and the next you are watching yourself in a fragment of time, a moment so ordinary you might have forgotten it entirely in life. You see yourself turning toward a stranger on the street, offering a smile, and in an instant you feel the warmth it brought them. Then, without pause, the scene dissolves and another rises, then another, until the moments come faster and faster, like waves cresting over one another. It is not a choice. It is as if some hidden current deep within you has been triggered, pulling everything you have ever been into view. This unfolding is not limited to sight. You do not merely watch your life, you feel it, every nuance, every intention behind every word and gesture. When you see yourself speak harshly, you also feel the sting it caused in another. When you watch yourself act in kindness, you feel the relief, the gratitude, the quiet healing it set in motion. It is immediate and unfiltered, bypassing any defenses or justifications you once clung to. There is no judgment handed down from outside. You are the one who measures the truth of your own actions, and in this state, there is no possibility of self-deception. The clarity is absolute. Time no longer behaves as it did before. You can linger in a single moment for what feels like hours, absorbing every detail, then slip through years in the space of a breath. The sequence is not strictly linear. Instead, events are connected by threads of meaning, by emotional resonance, by the way one choice led to another, even across decades. A decision made in youth might leap forward to a consequence in your final years, and the link between them is undeniable. You begin to see your life as a vast and intricate design, one that could never have been understood while you were living it moment to moment. There is also the startling realization that you are not only watching yourself from within your own skin. At times, you see through the eyes of others, feeling how they experienced you. A conversation you thought was harmless now carries the weight of the disappointment they felt but never voiced. A gesture of care you had forgotten is revealed to have changed the course of someone's path. This is where the review deepens beyond memory and into a kind of soul mapping, where the invisible impact of your presence in the world becomes visible and undeniable. The emotions come in waves, but they do not overwhelm. Even the moments of regret are met with an odd gentleness, as though you are being shown the truth not to be punished, but to be made whole. There is an intelligence in the way the review unfolds, guiding you toward understanding, toward a more complete vision of who you have been and who you are becoming. You sense that this process is not meant to break you down, but to release you from illusions, to set you free from the narratives you carried in life that were never quite accurate. At times, the images expand beyond the confines of your own personal story. You may see the ripple effects of your choices as they touched others, and then others still, far beyond anyone you knew by name. A kind word given to one person may have encouraged them to help another, setting off a chain of quiet good you never could have imagined. In the same way, moments of harm or neglect may be shown rippling outward, not to condemn you, but to awaken a profound awareness of the interconnectedness of all life. You realize that nothing you did ever existed in isolation. Every thought, every action was a thread in a much larger tapestry. Sometimes, what triggers the review is not the most dramatic event of your life, but something achingly small, the way you held someone's hand, the way you walked away from a conversation without looking back. These seemingly minor choices become entry points to larger truths, revealing patterns that ran through your entire existence. You see how often you acted from fear rather than love, or how often you trusted the heart's whisper even when it defied logic. This recognition does not crush you. If anything, it inspires a longing to grow, to become more aligned with what you now understand as the deeper currents of your being. The pace of the review shifts as it progresses. In the beginning, it may feel like a rush, as though the gates have been thrown open and the floodwaters of memory are surging through. But eventually it slows, focusing more deliberately on certain moments that seem to hold greater weight. Here, you are invited not only to witness but to absorb, to feel the full resonance of those choices and the lessons they carry. It is not unlike a master painter stepping back from their work to study it from every angle, except you are both the artist and the painting, the creator and the creation. Some describe this phase as being bathed in light while it happens, a light that is not merely illumination but presence. It is as if the review takes place within a field of profound understanding and love, a space that holds you completely, no matter what truths are revealed. This light does not interfere, yet it seems to infuse every memory with a sense of meaning that transcends the individual details. Even the moments you once saw as failures are reframed as opportunities, missed, perhaps, but not lost forever. By the time the review begins to fade, you are not the same as you were when it started. You have been stretched across the landscape of your life, seeing it from every vantage point, feeling it through every heart it touched. The weight of your story has been lifted from a narrow perspective into something vast and unending. You understand now why this happens so soon after death, because the clarity it brings is essential for whatever comes next. You cannot move forward carrying illusions about who you have been. The truth, once seen this way, becomes the foundation for every step your soul will take in the realms beyond. It is often said that death frees you instantly from all earthly concerns, that the moment you leave the body, you step into a state of bliss and detachment where nothing from the material world can touch you. But this is not always what happens in those first moments. For many souls, there is a heaviness that does not vanish with the final breath, a weight that lingers and tugs like an invisible cord pulling them backward. It is the gravity of unfinished business, and it can hold a spirit closer to the earth than they ever imagined possible. This pull is not the same as regret in the way the living think of it. It is a deep, magnetic connection to the unresolved, to promises unkept, to words unspoken, to wounds never mended. And in those first minutes after death, when the soul is still hovering near the familiar world, that tether can feel as strong as the bond to the physical body once was. The sensation often begins as a thought, but it is a thought that carries weight. It might be a flash of a face, a loved one you argued with and never reconciled. It might be the image of a child whose future you fear without your guidance. It could be a lingering desire for justice, a feeling that something was stolen from you that you must set right. In the non-physical state, thought is far more potent than it was in the body, and each of these flashes is not just a memory but a living connection. The soul can feel the emotional energy still radiating from the people and situations tied to those thoughts. The pull is not metaphorical. It is an actual draw of energy that can cause the soul to remain near the physical world, sometimes even attempting to intervene. For some, this tether is born out of love. A parent who passes while their child is still small may find themselves unwilling to move on, staying close to watch over and protect them. The intention may be pure, but the choice to linger can hold the soul in a kind of limbo, preventing them from moving into the higher realms where greater understanding and guidance could be offered. For others, the tether is woven from fear or guilt, A person who feels they have failed someone may remain near, not out of love alone, but from the desperate need to make amends. Yet in the state beyond the body, the means to do so are limited, and the soul's own heaviness can cloud the path forward. There are also those whose attachments are not to people but to possessions, achievements, or even grudges. The businessman who poured decades into building his company might find it impossible to release his identity as its leader, hovering near boardrooms and offices as if his presence could still influence outcomes. The artist might cling to unfinished works, unwilling to let others touch or complete them. The soul who carried resentment into death may remain tethered to the very person they opposed, their energy locked in a cycle of attention that binds them to the earthly plane. The irony is that, without a physical form, these connections become even more consuming, because there is no distraction of the body to dull the emotional intensity. In the first 15 minutes after death, the soul is still deeply attuned to the rhythms and sensations of earthly life. The pull of unfinished business can be overwhelming precisely because it is so fresh. The images, the emotions, the sensations tied to those unresolved matters flood the awareness like a tide, and it takes great clarity to resist their current. Some spirits find that the welcoming presences who arrive at the moment of passing will attempt to gently draw their attention away from these ties, encouraging them to look toward the light and the path beyond. Yet, if the soul is not ready, they may look back instead, unwilling to turn away from what they feel must be resolved. This does not mean that the soul is trapped forever by unfinished business. The spiritual realms operate on laws of compassion and timing that allow for growth and release. But the longer a spirit remains fixated on earthly matters, the denser their vibration becomes, making it harder to perceive the guidance waiting for them. In some cases, the pull is so strong that the soul remains near the living for days, weeks, or even years by the measure of earth time, repeating scenes, visiting familiar places, or trying to communicate in dreams. Those who are sensitive to the unseen may feel their presence, sometimes with warmth, other times with an unshakable heaviness in the air. From the perspective of the soul, this is not always experienced as suffering. Sometimes, the attachment feels purposeful, like a mission they must fulfill before moving on. They might believe that protecting a loved one from harm or ensuring a promise is kept is more important than their own transition. But from the higher view, these missions are rarely necessary in the way the soul believes. The living have their own paths, and the greater design ensures that each journey continues regardless of another's physical presence. The challenge for the newly departed is to trust that release is not abandonment, that stepping forward into the greater light does not mean leaving their loved ones behind. There are also karmic threads to consider. Unfinished business is often tangled with patterns carried over from past lives, conflicts, debts, and bonds that were not resolved before the moment of death. In this sense, the pull back toward earthly concerns can be the echo of an even older story, one that spans multiple incarnations. When the soul remains in this state, it can reinforce the same patterns, leading to a kind of spiritual stagnation. Only by releasing the fixation can the soul move into spaces where true resolution becomes possible, sometimes through planning the circumstances of a future life where balance can be restored. The weight of unfinished business in the minutes after death is a profound reminder of how interconnected life truly is. Every word spoken, every bond formed, every wound left unhealed, weaves itself into the fabric of the soul. In the physical world, it is easy to push these matters aside, to tell ourselves that there will be time later to make amends or speak our truth. But in death, there is no later for the body. The moment comes abruptly, and the soul is left holding everything it did not set down in life. That is why the wisest among the living strive to clear their emotional debts while they are here, to speak forgiveness, to live with honesty, to release the grudges that quietly anchor them to the past. In those first moments beyond the veil, when the earth still feels just an arm's reach away, the pull of unfinished business is both the last tether to what was and the first test of whether the soul is ready to embrace what comes next. Some release it easily, stepping into the light with a sense of completion and readiness. Others linger, not yet able to let go. And yet, no matter how long it takes, the invitation forward remains patient, unwavering, and waiting for the moment the soul chooses to accept it. It begins as something almost imperceptible, not a blaze or a sudden burst, but a subtle shift in the very fabric of your awareness. At first, it feels like a warmth at the edges of your perception, a quiet hum that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The memories of your life, the impressions and emotions that have just swept through you, start to settle, and in that stillness you sense it, a presence. It is not a figure standing before you, and it is not a tunnel pulling you forward. It is light, yes, but not light as you have ever known it. It does not merely illuminate the space around you. It knows you. It sees you in a way nothing ever has, and that knowing is not cold observation but a recognition so complete that it feels like the embrace of home after lifetimes away. The light is alive. It is intelligent in a way that surpasses thought, because thought feels too small a word for what it communicates. You do not hear it speak, yet every part of you understands. It greets you without words, and in that greeting is the assurance that you have always belonged, that there has never been a moment when you were not seen, not loved, not held in its awareness. The warmth intensifies, but it is not heat as the body would understand it. It is more like a dissolving of everything that was heavy. The weight of regret, of confusion, of identity itself begins to slip away. You realize with startling clarity that the light is not an external force calling you from a distance. It is within you as much as it is before you. The separation between you and it is an illusion, one that begins to fade the longer you remain in its presence. Every fear you carried about what might come after death is met here, not with answers in the form of facts, but with a direct experience of peace so total that the question itself loses meaning. The light does not demand that you move toward it, yet you feel the most natural pull you have ever known, a gentle but irresistible current that seems to come from the very center of your being. This presence is aware of everything you have ever done, yet there is no condemnation. It knows the shadows and the moments you wish you could undo, and still, it radiates only acceptance. This is perhaps the most disarming aspect of the encounter, the absence of judgment where you might have expected it. In its place is a depth of love that is not dependent on your actions or worthiness. It is as though it has been loving you in precisely the same way through every triumph and every failure, and now, standing in its radiance, you can finally feel what that means. The closer you come to this light, the more the boundaries of self begin to soften. You find that the thoughts you once had about who you are, your name, your history, your body, begin to feel like faint echoes of something you once wore, but no longer need. In their place is a vastness that cannot be contained in a single identity. You are yourself, but you are also more. The light seems to awaken dormant memory, not of events or timelines, but of essence, of the truth of what you have always been beneath the roles you played in the physical world. Some describe this moment as an unfolding, as though the light is gently peeling away layers you didn't even know you carried. Others feel it as a merging, where the distance between you and it collapses until you cannot tell where you end and it begins. In either case, there is no fear. The pull forward is not coercion, it is the soul's natural response to recognition. This is the place where longing ends, because what you longed for was never outside of you, and yet here it is, meeting you in full. The light is not static. It moves, shifts, and adapts to your readiness. If there is hesitation within you, attachments or unfinished threads that keep you turned toward the world you've just left, the light does not force you onward. Instead, it waits, patient beyond measure, holding you in a kind of timeless space until you are ready to step through. For some, this readiness comes instantly. For others, the pull is tempered by the weight of those left behind, by love that still reaches back toward the living. The light seems to understand this without explanation, and in its understanding is permission to release in your own time. Yet even in that pause, the connection with the light remains. You feel it as a constant backdrop, an unwavering truth that nothing can alter. It is this connection that often dissolves fear entirely, for once you have touched the light, even if you choose to linger near the earthly realm for a while, you know that nothing in existence can erase it. It is the anchor that assures you there is more beyond the moment of death, more beyond any transition, and that this more is not a distant promise but a reality already within you. Stepping into the light, or allowing the light to step fully into you, is unlike any journey you could have taken in the physical. There is no sense of distance, no path to travel, yet you cross into something undeniably new. Many describe an expansion so total that it feels as though they are becoming the light itself, and in doing so, they gain access to understanding that cannot be carried back to the living in full. Here, truths are not explained, they are known. You see not only your own soul's path, but the interwoven nature of all souls, the way every life is part of a grand and living network that the light sustains. And yet, perhaps the most astonishing revelation is that the light was never something you had to reach. It has always been the core of who you are, concealed beneath layers of fear, illusion, and forgetting. Death did not create the light, it simply removed the veil that kept you from recognizing it. Once you see it, once you feel it, the certainty remains. You may move forward into realms unknown, or you may pause to resolve what holds you, but you will never again doubt that the light is the truest reality there is. At some point after the initial wonder or disorientation has begun to settle, a subtle shift occurs in the presence around you. You begin to notice that you are not simply adrift in a vast, luminous expanse. You are not alone. There is a sensation, not so much of someone approaching from a distance, but of a familiar frequency entering your awareness. It is gentle yet undeniable, a kind of knowing that says you are seen, recognized, and cared for. These presences are not strangers. Even if you cannot attach a name or a face in the way you could in life, the recognition runs deeper than memory. It is the recognition of souls that have been intertwined across countless turns of existence. Their presence carries a profound reassurance that you are exactly where you are meant to be, and that there is no danger in what lies ahead. For some, these figures are loved ones who have already made this crossing. They may appear in a form that reflects how you most remember them, their faces warm with affection, their eyes free of the burdens they carried in life. For others, the greeters may be guides who have been with you long before this life began, beings of light who seem both personal and yet far greater than any single lifetime could hold. They radiate a calm that softens any lingering fear, and their communication is not with words but with a direct transfer of feeling, thought, and understanding. In an instant, you know why they are here. They have come to help you adjust, to orient you to this new reality, and to ensure that your transition continues smoothly. The first orientation is not a lecture or a list of instructions. It unfolds more like a conversation without sound, an exchange of truths that you absorb effortlessly. They help you understand what has happened, not through explanation alone, but through allowing you to experience the shift from their perspective. You might be shown how your energy now flows, how your perception can expand even further if you allow it, and how you are no longer bound by the limits that once defined your existence. There is no rush, no clock ticking down, only the steady assurance that you will be given exactly what you need to move forward. Some are shown the boundary between the physical world they have just left and the realms they are now entering. It may appear as a threshold of light, a change in vibration, or even a symbolic landscape that marks the line between two states of being. If there is lingering attachment to the world just left behind, the guides will help you navigate it. They may walk you through the threads of connection that still bind you, the loved ones grieving your absence, the promises unfulfilled, the responsibilities left undone. These are not shown to burden you with guilt, but to acknowledge that love and care do not end here. You are helped to see that you can still send peace, blessings, and strength back along those threads, even if your physical presence has been withdrawn. For others, the orientation focuses on calming confusion. There are souls who, upon arrival, do not realize they have died. They may still feel as though they are in a dream or a strange in-between state. The guides meet them with patience and compassion, gently revealing the truth in ways that the soul can accept. This might involve showing them their own body from a distance, allowing them to watch scenes from their final moments, or giving them glimpses of loved ones carrying on without them. The realization comes not as a shock but as a slow settling into acceptance, accompanied by the steady reassurance that there is more ahead than what has been left behind. There is also a cleansing that can take place here. The guides assist in easing away the lingering imprints of physical life, the fear of pain, the heaviness of unresolved emotions, the confusion of illness or sudden death. It is like having the dust of the world brushed from your energy field, leaving you lighter and clearer than you have felt in a very long time. In this state, you can begin to truly inhabit your new form, to explore its abilities, and to recognize that you are now operating from a place where thought, intention, and movement are one. For some, the orientation includes a kind of reintroduction to the self. You are reminded of who you are beyond the personality you inhabited in your most recent life. You may see yourself as a being of light, a soul that has worn many names and forms, each one a chapter in a much larger journey. This can be overwhelming in its beauty, to realize that you are far more than the story you just completed, and that this moment is only a step on a much longer path. The guides help to anchor this understanding so that it becomes a source of confidence rather than confusion. The orientation also prepares you for what comes next. While there is no universal timetable, there are stages that most souls will pass through. You may be shown that there will be a period of review, a chance to see the life you have just left from a perspective free of ego or defensiveness. You will see not only your choices but the ripples they created in the lives of others. The guides do not frame this as judgment but as an opportunity for growth, a way to gather wisdom that will serve you in whatever path lies ahead. In some cases, the guides offer glimpses of what is possible beyond this threshold, realms of learning, reunion, rest, or preparation for another incarnation. They may hint at soul groups waiting to welcome you, at places of healing where the spirit is restored, or at vast halls of knowledge where the patterns of creation are studied and understood. These are not promises but invitations, and the choice of where to go next always rests with you. The freedom to choose is one of the first great revelations of this stage, that while death removes you from one form, it does not strip you of your sovereignty. The orientation is also deeply personal. The way it unfolds depends entirely on the soul's state of mind, its level of awareness, and its readiness to move forward. For some, it is brief, a warm embrace and a simple reassurance that they already know the way. For others, it is longer, a gradual easing into the truth, with repeated reassurances until they feel steady enough to step onward. No one is rushed, no one is left behind. The love that infuses this process is so complete that even the most fearful or resistant soul eventually feels safe enough to take the next step. As the orientation draws to a close, there is often a shift in focus. The attention that has been on you begins to gently turn toward the path ahead. You are given a sense of direction, a pull toward the place or state that will serve you best now. It might feel like following a current in a river, except here the current responds to your own readiness and will. The guides remain close, walking with you or holding your awareness steady until you are fully in motion toward your next destination. What remains after this first orientation is a feeling of deep grounding in the truth that death is not an end but a transition. You know now that you are supported, that you are part of something vast and loving, and that whatever comes next will be met not in fear, but with the knowledge that you are not alone. This realization is the foundation for everything that follows, the reviews, the reunions, the choices yet to be made. And it is in this moment that many souls, for the first time, truly understand that the journey has only just begun. It begins almost without the soul realizing it. The moment the crossing is complete, there is a shift so profound that the human mind could never have imagined it while still bound to a body. The heaviness that was carried for an entire lifetime, and often for lifetimes before that, starts to melt away. At first it feels like the simple absence of pain. The dull ache in the bones, the sharp stab of illness, the lingering tension of a body worn down by time or trauma, all of it vanishes in an instant. But what follows is more than the disappearance of physical discomfort. There is a deeper release, one that reaches into the very fabric of the soul. Fear is the first to go. It drains out like water from an opened vessel, not slowly, but in a rush. It is startling how much fear the living carry without even realizing it. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of death itself. On the other side, that weight becomes visible in a way it never was before. The soul can feel it slipping away, like chains falling from the wrists. There is no struggle in letting it go, because here there is nothing left to threaten or harm. The sense of danger that once haunted every choice simply has no place in this new state. What replaces it is not just relief, but a kind of expansive safety that seems woven into the very air of the realm the soul has entered. Then comes the release of pain that is not physical but emotional. Grief that was never spoken, regret that lingered like a shadow in the heart. Old wounds inflicted by betrayal, abandonment, or cruelty. All the moments of misunderstanding, of words left unsaid, of love withheld, they rise to the surface. But instead of stabbing or burning as they did in life, they dissolve. Sometimes this release comes with tears, but the tears here are different. They do not sting or swell the eyes, for the soul has no body. They are felt as pure emotion flowing out, untangled from the stories that once bound them. For some, this discharge is overwhelming at first. The human self worked so hard to hold it all in, to manage the weight of existence without collapsing. But here, nothing needs to be held. The soul does not fear being undone by its own feelings, because it senses that these feelings are not permanent truths, they are remnants of a journey now complete. As they are released, they are transformed into understanding. What was once shame becomes compassion for the self. What was once anger becomes clarity about what was learned through it. Limitation is the last to fall away, and when it does, the soul feels the true scope of freedom for the first time. In life, limitations seem natural. There are walls of circumstance, barriers of time, rules of the body, and ceilings to what can be known or done. But once the soul is free, these are revealed for what they were, temporary structures meant to guide the experience of incarnation. Without them, the soul realizes it can be anywhere, perceive anything, and connect with any being simply by aligning its awareness. Movement is not walking, communication is not speaking. Knowledge is not earned through study, but accessed directly, like opening a door into light. The smallness the soul once believed in is replaced by a vastness that feels both awe-inspiring and intimately familiar. The speed of this release surprises many. It is not a slow unburdening, drawn out over days or weeks. In this realm, the concept of time is fluid, but by earthly measure it can happen in moments. One breath here can feel like the release of decades of suffering, yet the process is not without tenderness. The transition is guided, whether by unseen helpers or by the gentle intelligence of the realm itself. There is no forcing, no ripping away. Everything that falls from the soul is let go in the exact measure and order it is ready for. For those who carried heavy suffering in life, the relief can be so great that it feels like an entirely new kind of existence. Imagine living in a dim, confined room for so long that you forgot what sunlight was. Then imagine stepping outside into a warm, endless horizon. The light is not just around you, but within you. The boundaries of self blur in the best possible way. You are still you, but you are also part of everything else. There is no sense of separation from the love that permeates this place, and in that unity, the last fragments of fear or grief dissolve without effort. In this state, the soul can finally see the truth of its own journey. Pain, fear, and limitation were never punishments. They were tools for learning, for deepening, for refining the soul's understanding of itself and of others. In the clarity of this new awareness, the soul sees not just the events of its life, but the purpose they served. Even the hardest moments are understood as threads in a much larger tapestry, one that could not have been woven without them. The emotional discharge is not simply the removal of burdens, it is an expansion into a higher vibration where those burdens cannot exist. Once this release is complete, the soul becomes lighter, clearer, and far more capable of perceiving what lies ahead. It is ready for the next steps in the journey, whether that is reuniting with loved ones, exploring realms of learning, or preparing for its next incarnation. But whatever path is chosen, it begins from a place of wholeness. Nothing is carried forward that does not serve the soul's growth. It is here that the soul realizes something profound. The liberation it feels now has always been possible. Even in life, there were moments when fear could have been released, when pain could have been forgiven, when limitations could have been transcended through awareness. Death does not create the freedom, it simply removes the veils that hid it, and once those veils are gone, there is no going back to the old way of being. There comes a point, after the initial wonder, the guidance, and the gentle acclimation to this new state, when you begin to sense something shifting in the atmosphere around you. It is subtle at first, like the quiet turning of a page in a vast book you didn't know you were reading. The space you are in feels both infinite and intimate, yet now it hums with a kind of expectancy. You realize that everything up until this point, the separation from the body, the awareness of your new form, the welcoming presences, the easing of fear, has been leading to this moment. It is the first time since crossing over that you feel a profound awareness of choice. Not a choice made with hurried logic or pressured urgency, but the kind that is felt deep within the essence of who you are, as if the soul itself is leaning forward to decide. This is the moment when you understand that your journey could now take one of several paths. You might feel the pull of the higher realms, the promise of places where the light grows ever more brilliant, and the sense of separation from the divine dissolves into perfect union. You might also feel a tug back toward the world you've just left, to the familiar textures of human life, to loved ones still on their journeys, to unfinished purposes you feel were not fully lived out. And then there is the more complex pull, the call toward reincarnation, the chance to step once more into physical form, not as a return to what you've lost, but as an opportunity to shape what has yet to be completed. Each of these directions carries its own vibration, its own flavor of energy. The higher realms radiate a purity that feels like home in the truest sense, not a building or a place, but a return to the frequency you have always belonged to. It is a place where the idea of suffering cannot even take shape, where the warmth and joy you feel are not fleeting moments but the very fabric of existence. It is the natural upward movement of the soul, and many choose it simply because it is the clearest alignment with their present state. But as enticing as this pull is, there is also an awareness that choosing it now may mean closing the door, at least for a time, to the growth that physical life uniquely offers. Remaining near the physical plane carries a different energy altogether. Here, you might serve as a silent companion to those still living, offering subtle impressions, guiding thoughts, or comfort in moments of grief. Some choose this path to watch over loved ones, to help gently shape the unfolding of events from a vantage point just beyond the veil. Others linger because they feel they cannot yet leave, their ties are too strong, their hearts still intertwined with unfinished stories. In this space, time moves differently, and while your connection to the living remains, so does the risk of becoming anchored in what has already passed. Then there is the option of reincarnation, which stirs a mixture of curiosity, resolve, and even apprehension. The thought of returning to the limitations of a body, of stepping back into a world of challenges, might seem unappealing when compared to the freedom you have now. Yet for some, the call is undeniable. They see the patterns that have yet to be completed, the lessons not yet mastered, the debts still to be balanced, and they recognize that only by stepping once more into the density of matter can those threads be fully woven. This choice is often accompanied by visions, glimpses of potential lives, of circumstances that would best serve the soul's current growth. These are not presented as fates imposed upon you, but as possibilities you may freely accept or decline. In this choice moment, no one forces your hand. The guides you have met will walk beside you, offering clarity when you seek it, but they do not interfere. They may remind you of the agreements you made before your last incarnation, the soul contracts that still hold purpose, or the overarching trajectory of your journey. They might also show you the balance of your inner state, how prepared you are for the higher realms, how anchored you still are to the earthly, and how much your spirit longs for the challenges and triumphs of another human life. The awareness that you are choosing with full freedom is both exhilarating and sobering. In the physical world, decisions are often made with incomplete information, clouded by emotion or circumstance. Here, there is no such fog. You see the implications of each choice stretching out like threads into the future, not in rigid detail, but in clear lines of potential. You understand the emotional, spiritual, and energetic consequences of each path, in ways that leave no room for self-deception. Some souls decide quickly, feeling an unmistakable resonance with one path over the others. They step into the pull with complete trust, and in doing so, they move instantly toward their next phase. Others linger in contemplation, not because they are lost, but because they honor the weight of this moment. They may revisit scenes from their past life, re-experiencing them with this new clarity. They might drift briefly to the edge of the physical plane, touching the familiar energy of the world to see if the pull remains strong. They may gaze toward the higher realms to feel the draw of that luminous peace before deciding whether they are ready for it. It is here that the soul's deepest desires are laid bare. Not the surface wants that shift with mood or circumstance, but the enduring intentions that have guided your journey for lifetimes. Do you crave rest and restoration, a long sojourn in the realms of light before venturing again into form? Do you hunger for the challenge of growth in the crucible of human life, knowing the risks but also the rewards? Or do you feel called to remain close to those you love, to offer unseen support until their own crossings are complete? In the stillness of this choice moment, you realize that no path is inherently better than another. Each is simply a continuation of your journey, shaped by your readiness, your needs, and your vision for what comes next. Whatever you choose, it will be honored by the loving intelligence that surrounds you here. And once you choose, the entire fabric of your reality will subtly shift to align with that decision. The light will bend toward your path, the energies will gather, and the next stage of your soul's unfolding will begin to take form. When the decision is finally made, it feels less like stepping onto a road and more like merging with a current that has been waiting for you. Whether it carries you upward into radiant realms, forward into a new birth, or gently alongside the world you have left, you move with a sense of rightness that leaves no room for regret. The choice has been made in the purest clarity you have ever known, and with it, you step fully into the next chapter of the life beyond life. It is tempting, from the perspective of the living, to think of death as the final curtain, the end of the story, the last page in the book. But for the soul, the moment the body releases its hold is not a conclusion at all. It is a shift in the landscape, a change of scenery, the quiet turning of a page that opens into another chapter written long before the first breath was taken in this life. The release from the body is only the threshold, and those first moments beyond it are not random. They are deeply formative, shaping the journey that unfolds in the realms ahead. In the seconds after the final heartbeat, the soul is met with an awareness that is sharper, more expansive, and more fluid than anything it experienced while incarnated. The noise of the physical world, its constant pull of needs, fears, and obligations, is gone. In its place is a vast stillness that is not empty, but filled with an almost tangible sense of presence. Here, the soul feels more itself than ever before. There is no mask to wear, no role to play, no obligation to fit into a story it did not choose. In this stillness, the first impressions are made, and they matter. This is why the earliest minutes after death are so important. Whatever the soul focuses on here sets a trajectory. A soul that emerges from the body and turns toward light, love, and expansion begins to move along a path that aligns with its highest growth. A soul that lingers, still tethered to the pull of unfinished desires or unresolved fear, can stall its own movement forward. These moments are like the opening steps on a long journey. A slight turn here can lead to a completely different destination later. For many, the first 15 minutes are filled with a kind of awe. The clarity of vision allows them to see both the life they have just left and the reality they are entering, almost as if they exist in two places at once. Loved ones who passed before may appear, radiating a love that feels deeper than any earthly relationship could hold. Guides, beings of light, or presences that feel both familiar and mysterious may step forward, gently influencing the soul toward peace and acceptance. Even for those who had no belief in such things while alive, this presence is undeniable. It calls to something ancient within them, something that recognizes home. But awe is not the only possible experience. The soul's state of mind at the moment of death carries over. A person who dies in fear or confusion may find those feelings coloring the first moments on the other side. This does not mean they are trapped, but it can shape how they perceive what is happening. The loving presences are still there, the light is still calling, but the soul's focus may be clouded by the residue of its final moments in the body. This is why those who have studied the art of conscious dying emphasize the importance of cultivating peace and acceptance long before the physical end comes. The tone set in those early moments has a momentum of its own. The sacredness of this transition lies in its continuity. Death is not a rupture, it is a handoff, the baton of consciousness passing from one mode of existence to another without losing its thread of identity. What you are here, you are there. The journey continues without interruption, and the lessons, connections, and experiences you gathered while incarnated remain part of your being. Nothing is erased. Nothing is wasted. The soul's tapestry grows more intricate, more colorful, with each passage from one realm to the next. For those who have feared death, this continuity is a revelation. The idea that all they are would vanish like smoke was always an illusion. The awareness, the love, the essence that made them who they are is indestructible. Death simply removes the physical shell that allowed them to operate in this world, much like stepping out of a suit of clothing that no longer fits. And as with any change of environment, there is an adjustment, but there is no annihilation. This understanding transforms not only how we think about death, but how we think about life. If those first 15 minutes after death are a mirror of the consciousness we carried in life, then the preparation begins now. The fears we dissolve, the peace we cultivate, the compassion we nurture, all of it travels with us. We are, in essence, packing for the next leg of the journey with every thought, choice, and intention we set here. The continuum of the soul stretches far beyond the limits of one lifetime. What begins in this world continues in others. The friends we make, the love we share, the wisdom we earn, these are the threads we carry forward. In this way, every moment of life is part of preparing for those first moments after death. The crossing is not just a release, it is a reintroduction to a larger truth we have always known. When the soul finally steps fully into that truth, the mystery of death dissolves into recognition. This is not a strange, alien place. It is a return to a realm that has been visited countless times before. The landscapes of light, the familiar souls, the feeling of unbounded presence, all of it reminds the traveler that the journey is eternal. And with that recognition comes a choice: to continue learning, to reunite with soul family, to prepare for another incarnation, or to move into entirely new realms of existence. The sacred continuum is the thread that ties all of this together. It is the reassurance that no matter how many chapters you pass through, the story of your soul never truly ends. Each crossing is not a fall into darkness but a step into a new dawn. And the first 15 minutes of that dawn, like the first light breaking over a horizon, have the power to set the tone for the entire day ahead, or in this case, the entire next chapter of your eternal journey.